Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So I'm going to do a series of 4 pieces that are not necessarily directly related to each other, but they're all kind of things that have been emerging in the last couple months and weeks of my writing. And in the process, I also want to acknowledge that the the Diversity Forum at Pitt is going on right now, and some really important things have been brought up during that in terms of being active both locally and globally. And so as the night progresses, I will, in the chat, if it's okay, share a couple of links of things that I think are important for people to be aware of. So with that said, I will just get started. The FBI Dream Division knocks down the door to my consciousness without a warrant, walks in on the anti-colonial work happening in the basement, arrests my radical REM cycles. I, eyes rapidly shifting behind my eyelids, shield myself behind the science I have been doing upstairs, swear up and down that I was only dreaming about data. They point to the radical texts I have hastily shoved behind my voltage traces. I plead spontaneous processing. They claim that as criminal. I ask to see the law. They scribble legalese over my citizenship, tape my expired green card over top. I ask permission to wake up and am denied. The FBI Dream Division sets up a stakeout in my sleep cycle, is waiting for me when my eyes burn too much to stay open fire on the fermenting rebellion in my emotions, call me emotional or hysterical for daring to have nightmares about them. I remind them that they were not invited. They cite me for inciting violence with the subvocal tremors of my vocal folds. Ask me to sing the anthem. I oblige. Their algorithms analyze the shiver in my soprano, the pitch of my pronunciation, the micro tremors in my vibrato. Their algorithms assign a category with 95% confidence, classify me dissident. I wake up, drowned in my own sweat, ruled suicide by sleep deprivation. The FBI Dream Division calls me comatose, claims I was never alive. All right, so the next piece that I want to share is one that was inspired in part by the time that I spent in Seattle, but I think is also very relevant to what I see going on around me in the Pittsburgh community as well. And I hope that this lands. Listen, when I describe how a sign typeset in English and Spanish and Arabic and Korean and reading, hate has no home here, makes home feel foreign. Listen, when I narrate how my joints earthquake in the face of faceless signage, how the people it is meant to convince are in hiding inside, and the people who can read the languages on the signage outside are just passing by, are only ever just passing by. Listen, when I point out the scent of fresh baked revisionism lingering in the air while the woman in the window with the perfect beachy hair bends over the oven and she has no face. Just a thin, wide-spaced font across her front typeset in too many tongues to count against her pastel front door and succulents and the interlocking squares of her minimalist decor. Listen, when I reveal how hate has no home here, but it has built itself a condo. Thank you. Okay. So this third piece that I want to share with you guys is a reflection on language and English in particular, English with its colonialist and its imperialist roots, and yet as the language that for many of us is the language that we are able to write in. all of the complexities of that. Tip English from the crucible of my tongue. Here in the heat of an equatorial mouth, this language becomes liquid, streaked rainbow like oil slick, each color another culture from which it was cobbled together. Pour molten English into this pen. Place this pen into many unchained hands, holding it steady as we tweeze the poison fangs, leaving a new language, defanged and reshaped in our image. And then we write. Start from scratch. Bend the raw material of English into a shape that speaks us. Welcome the streaks of color we no longer want to scrub from it. We cannot reform it, so together we reform it. This is our English to make ink of. This is our pen with which to rethink love. This is our flag to write on. It came with lines pre-drawn, and in this new dawn, we write a new poem in an English that is a new tongue that every one of us shaped from our own selves. English no longer crushes us between its teeth like the hound of a colony. We no longer write anguished anthems of triumph or defeat. We write songs of celebration that sound the way we speak, that taste like being free. All right, and the last piece that I want to share is a little bit of a departure from this tone, something that I think is a little bit more fun and a little bit more celebratory and emblematic, I think, of the future that I'd like to see. I'm gonna try and stand up for this one, and I'm gonna hopefully remember how it goes. We will see how well that works. There's this movie in the future that I can't stop watching. I call it Helmets and Hijabs. It's a movie about a Muslim girl who's a princess in space with a laser blaster. But nobody calls her a terrorist for carrying it. I mean, come on. It's a space movie. Of course, she has a laser blaster. She never gets profiled or reported. There's no Patriot Act in this movie. There's no patriots in this movie. There's no America in this movie. There's this Muslim girl called Princess Khadija. She has a tiara and a spacesuit and a laser blaster. Okay, so the plot. Princess Khadija is sick of princessing. She's busy stressing about underground laser fights, and her royal family is super not down with this, so they throw her on a flight to space to teach her a lesson. But she is unfazed, sets her gaze on a new place to rule, and this movie is one fantastic, ridiculous adventure as this sister Avenger fights to take control of the throne of the moon. It's billed as action comedy. I see a scene, or several, where the sister struggles to work out how to wear her hijab with her spacesuit. Should it go inside the helmet or outside? Or is the helmet opaque enough that it doesn't matter? Everyone who matters in her life is a woman, and she likes it that way. She never falls in love with a white boy, never has to worry about whether he is worth her disgrace, or maybe she does fall desperately head over heels for a white boy for the whole damn movie. And she does nothing. She has other things on her mind, like the moon and how to find her way to a throne again, and anyway, crushes on white boys always pass. She knows this because she's been there before. He's just nice to look at. This movie is sort of sci-fi. Definitively not Oriental fantasy. There's no desert in this movie, no jinns, no magic. The only dust storms are moon dust. The only flying carpets are on the floors of her spacecraft. The only genies are her generals. And she prays 5 times a day, every day. That's not symbolic at all. There's this movie in the future that I can't stop watching about this Muslim girl princess space warrior called Khadija. And this movie is a flop. Critics call all the acting flat, call it bubblegum fluff, devoid of meaning, seemed like the director was fever dreaming, and none of that matters. Because audiences can't get enough, and nothing can stop the studio from making a sequel or 3, and me and my friends, well, we're standing in line opening night for every new release. Thank y'all so much.
So I just have a couple pieces to share tonight. Hard Shoes, you were amazing. That was so good, I want to say. So this first one I wrote more recently with, especially at the start with like George Floyd and all the protests. So yeah. So this one's a Black Abad. Right. The only things I write nowadays come etched in the blood of all the Black bodies whose names they'll never say, and I can't remember the last time I loved my Blackness or relished in my family's laughter. Each day I try to look in the mirror and smile because I can, because too many of us are already buried in graves labeled with names God did not give us. Oh, brown girl, filled with spirit, please don't let this world stomp out light, which only can be refracted through your skin, melanin rich with fibers, strengthened by words of hate, flesh dripping in sorrow, bandaged with movements. The scars might not fade, and the pain never will, but that's okay because we rise again each day and look in the mirror at a smiling reflection soaked in a beloved Blackness. So this one is Hands Which Called Me Home, a translation. So, listening to these poets, I think of the visibility of work, the importance resonating through the world. How do you reckon with telling your ancestors the struggles that filled them fill you? So striking the ways a voice can take on thunder and heat, words which would never take such form in the outline of eyes. Look at the image taking to the sky. Look up as Marilyn Nelson does, with the slow force, halting words and ears outlined by hands of slaves upon my heart, which took flight with Brother Warren's might through the mules. I've now discovered there's a heat hot enough to bellow my soul, a fire blazing to bounds unknown, a match struck in my soul, illuminating history in the depths of race. Sonia Sanchez, a voice encompassing oceans of history, a soft-spoken smile, crevices filled in with burdens borne by ancestors in shackles. I have a feeling now, a feeling never experienced, voice echoing the alive thoughts of the Black women around me. Sanchez speaks words of protection over my existence, hearts weighing on my shoulders, the voice she uses to talk of her father in the writing, the same voice I hear at my kitchen table across from my father. I never knew my ancestors' existence kept at bay until Sanchez spoke each of them into the woman around me. And each new voice creates a new possibility, reimagining myself as writer, poet, body, self, being, all newly taking their places in the space of Black poets and writers, a place I didn't know existed. Excerpt from Sonia Sanchez's This Is Not a Small Voice. This is not a small love you hear. This is a large love, a passion for kissing, learning on its face. This is a love that crowns the feet with hands, that nourishes, conceives, feels the water, sails, mends the children, holds them inside our history, where they toast more than the flesh, where they suck the bones of the alphabet and spit out closed vowels. This is a love colored with iron and lace. This is a love initialed Black genius. This is not a small voice you hear. I felt it in this space, wholly by them. Belonging had invaded me long enough. Yearning manifested through powerful pronunciation. Sonia Sanchez called our, the ancestors to light, hum of hearts in harmony home. Excerpt from Marilyn Nelson's Mama's Promise. I've always pictured my own death as a closed door, a black room, a breathless leap from the mountaintop with time to throw out my arms, lift my head, and see, in the instant my heart stops, a whole galaxy of blue. I imagined I'd forget in the cessation of feeling while the guilt of my lifetime floated away like a nylon nightgown, and I'd fall into clean, fresh forgiveness. When you float to the bottom, child, like a mote down a sunbeam, you'll see me from a trillion miles away, my eyes looking up to you, my arms outstretched for you like night. Concepts floating around, black, white, being black is not just skin, a community I had been closed off to, those who understood the sorrows of soul, scars of soul scratched carelessly in the seams, gaze intensified upon skin, now switched to a new light founded by the shining eyes of women who have come before me. Sanchez says poets are crazy. Those who dance in summer rain, antics unmatched. She paints words free-flowing with her tongue, each stroke layering certainty into cells kissed in sun. When I soak in such glorious beams, skin simmers with joy as I look to my brother laughing, splashing around a golden boy glow. Self-realization of awakening, current self-planted and supple soil to take root. I've now reclaimed my name, myself, my writing, and the purpose of what has to come before to shape skin into proper form. A watchful gaze, and protected hand, purposeful history dropped into hands who take care of stories given with grace. My spirit strolled amongst the rest, smile gracing body head to toe. I will think of them often, not often enough, but now I do, known by hands resting on shoulders deemed worthy of weight by them being a concept I have yet to define. Picture this, them. Black woman who lived and existed in order for my creation and existence to be an embodiment of a realization of those in my life. My grandmother, my dad's cousin, my great-great aunt, Black woman who resided in the room of my resurrection, my brother's 6th grade teacher, me. Before I felt scrambled, filled with punctured self-being, lost in the turmoil of blackness not yet defined upon my skin. When Sonia speaks, it's not just poetry, but music. Music not bound on any scale, nor understood except in chants echoing deep from her lungs, voices and hums, a lyrical trance taking over. A poet, a Black poet, a writer of history, a writer of her story, a being given the gift of a lifetime of stories, a human with the ability to tell stories, a gift given to those who are open. Thank you.
So really when things were kicking off with the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's interesting to see that piece age, because there are some things that I actually put into that poem that I thought that have actually changed. Like you'll notice there's a line mentioned about rioting, which I felt it didn't do much, but now it's weird, not weird, but definitely been recontextualized. And also some of these lines are kind of eerie in the fact that I was writing about I can't breathe, and here we are again. And it's like I keep on adding a new name to the poem. So there's that poem Smog, and the poem I'm going to read before that is called The Right Way to Protest, and I actually wrote it yesterday. So you'll be able to see my my cognitive journey between 2014 all the way up to yesterday. I thought we did it. I thought we cracked the code. Both my hands were already up before I even saw you on the road, but you asked me to step out. So I took one knee down for liberty while the other cried, Please, there's no need to deliver me. I'm not ready to see the others on the report. And finally, you let me get up. Told me to march, but I walked for fear of the hoses. Said stand on the concrete, but I was afraid of the roses, so I turned to face you. Will you look me in the eyes when you do it? Yes. He scratched the Buick when he shot me, but most of them went into my body, so in that way we were the same. A cracked mirror of asphalt and pain, and he was smiling with his hand in his pocket. My knee replaced with his. There was no stopping this. The quiet hiss from my esophagus. I thought we did it. His eyes agreed as he was fired on his extended paid leave. That's blood money. But eyes of greed can't see past a personal need. That's blood money. Will you look me in the eyes when you take it? Yeah. But this time I noticed something different. We had the same eyes. And as the life left mine, it still had more than his, but not more than my kids. I'll be right back. My iPhone lights up in a Ziploc bag. Where are you at? I thought you did it. Took your hood up off your head like you told me to do. Didn't fight back when they started shoving you, was well spoken on your way to the interview. Now it's 11:42. Someone said they still left you on the ground. Please, where are you? Thank you. All right, and this next poem is Smog, which I had alluded to before. And in a way, you can kind of look at the first poem as like a vignette of this second poem. So this is like larger scale, and that was like, you know, the body laying on the ground, and it's like, how could you do this? Smog. Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So don't be surprised when I tell you that America's judicial system is insanely at fault, but riots don't accomplish anything. What if I told you burning down buildings and storming the streets only causes the grand jury to be more discreet, and that becoming abusive with the police only leads to a death toll increase? It seems the only way to survive this is to be patient. Because far too often, young African-American teens become patients as a result of not being patient. The facts are blatant when we have to listen to, no, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, Michael didn't make it. Mrs. Gardner, your husband's no longer with us anymore. And 4 policemen rushed to take down Eric Gardner using a tactic where, in terms of its legality, they were unsure. He hit the floor with a chokehold held tight. He did not punch, kick, or fight. Rather, he fought for air while the final seconds of his life took flight. Granted, all this was captured with a video camera on the site. Indisputable evidence for suspicion of excessive might, and the grand jury would still not indict. The medical examiners at the scene ruled the case a homicide. The grand jury could not decide, and when the American people questions the intensity of their side, the grand jury tells them to step aside. See, there's no justice in profiling, just us. And when the grand jury seems to be showing off their ability to refuse indictment as if it were a box of grand jewelry, there is no justice, but just ice. Freeze. Put your hands up. No wonder it feels like a Cold War. And all this pain, drifting in the snow, hanging in the air, is creating smog. And I can't breathe when I'm not being treated equal. I can't breathe when every time a police car passing feels like playing Russian roulette. I can't breathe when I'm hearing about person after person dying on the news. And please, Mr. Police Officer, the reason I'm reluctant to shake your hands when you greet me is because my hand's already shaking. And I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Don't you know I can't breathe? Asthma. I, as an African-American, have asthma, and the prejudiced walls of my America's esophagus are closing in, and sometimes it feels like we cannot win, and nowadays it feels like when I think the pain is finished, it's really only started to begin. I'm begging for change. I'm begging for change. Please, can you spare some change? Can anyone spare some change? The police have taken the sidewalk of my country and turned it into a shooting range. Can somebody spare some change? Because none of this makes sense. Why are they ignoring us at our own expense? The Bible, Mark 12:31, says, love your neighbor as yourself. And I know this isn't what God meant. Why do you still treat us like tenants when we never asked to pay the rent? But we shall overcome. When you overcome your ignorance and your stubbornness and your selfishness, for every wrong suspect you arrest is an innocent man put in handcuffs. For every innocent man put in handcuffs is an accidental murder. For every Accidental murder is a mother and a father and a brother and a sister and a cousin and a grandma and a grandpa who got a piece of their heart murdered. And for every member who got a piece of their heart murdered is a legal document wrongly worded. We've been eating at the dinner table, waiting for the waiter to bring the bill of rights. And to truly bring peace, it might take sleepless nights, and maybe we can rewrite our Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to be treated equal, and you have the right to testify in court before being shot. No, but racism is dead. Please, can you not? How am I supposed to feel at ease when the police and part of the government are the ones disturbing the peace? And Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But to be truly insane, you'd have to shoot a man and then tell the world it was his fault. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, I want to say that everyone who's read before me has been like absolutely incredible. So tonight I'm going to read a personal essay that I wrote a few months back. It's called On Seeking Joy in a Vacuum, and it runs kind of long, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So this is On Seeking Joy in a Vacuum. I swallow joy in pill capsules, 2 a night. If I into the empty box and stop my bones from trembling in the morning when my dreams of somewhere else dissolve into the reality of here and now, of an entire planet perched precariously on the edge of collapse, gravity distended. Early before my alarm prods the sleep away, my partner crawls over my blanket-coddled body, an apparition clouded by my night-swept eyelashes drifting off to work in the remote office of our living room. I smell that smell belonging to only them and think they may someday be the love of my life. I hear a hush, go back to sleep, they insist. Joy should live in my chest, wrapped tight against the flesh and pulsing arteries of my heart, but it doesn't. I lay in bed alone, wondering what the future looks like suspended in the abyss of uncertainty, eyes pointed at the ceiling till my alarm prods my body into mechanical motion. Winter blends into spring. You can see the fault lines separating and binding them at once if you look closely. Early spring is cold as winter, but more hopeful, usually. The tulips in the lawn of my childhood home will bloom soon, usually. Petals crack the skin of the ground. The skin of my knuckles bleed from too much hand washing and not enough lotion. I sit cross-legged with bandaged fingers in unkept grass in the lawn of the house I will inhabit for 2 months until I have somewhere else to go. An empty carton of almond milk and an empty carton of cigarettes sit a few meters off. I watch the cartons in silence, feeling a beam of sunlight grace the back of my unshaven neck. I wonder who brought them here to commiserate with me in the broken lawn chair at my side with the tattered seat. You've seen some shit, I offer. For a moment, the breeze rustles the dry twigs of the skeleton bushes. We all sit together, thinking about circumstance. Spring blends into winter. I've lost track of the days of the week. For years, I'd been collecting joy in Polaroids, a jar of fireflies tucked away on the bookshelf for later. I shake the photo album out onto the carpet to remind myself of it. The joy seeps between my fingers as I hold the corners of the film loose and buzzing in my palms. Joy is driving nowhere and ending up in another state just because you can. Just because you're young and the world can afford to unbuckle you from its machinery for 24 hours of wandering, of going somewhere else, says a photo of my best friends and I standing, arms raised on the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Joy is a lonely vending machine on the outskirts of town, the pin in the map marking the origin point of a rural adventure, says a photo of my favorite person sitting in loose gravel, can of Sprite in hand, tab popped. Joy is a pair of gardening gloves, roller skating pads, and a tangled heap of climbing rope, says a photo of a childhood friend crouched beneath the trestle of an abandoned canal bridge, victorious. Joy is sitting on the balcony alone after midnight, eyeing street lamps pinpricked along distant roads that curve out of focus. Joy is in the pinpricks of the fading stick and poke on my thigh, dotted by a friend of a friend while I crunched ice cubes horizontal on her kitchen floor. Joy is the slap of wet footsteps echoing toward us, a stranger in briefs with an invitation to jump into the lake, and the exchange of silent, agreeing nods that follow. Joy is the crackle of a blown car stereo, resilient against the crescendo of volume. Joy is the orange of a stolen traffic cone peeking out of the trunk that gleefully welcomed fifth passenger. Joy is a misplaced cigar on the dark and grassy crest of Flagstaff Hill, the smoke obscuring low-voiced stories shared in confidence. Joy is a spoonful of honey and blackberry jam spread thick over buttery morning toast. Joy is my mother waiting for me at the edge of the airport terminal, the descent from the escalator and into her arms. Joy is drive-through sherbet in the insurmountable heat of summer, leaving pennies on railroad tracks and waiting cross-legged for hours, ears tuned to the whistle of the next commercial train on its way somewhere else. A beer on the roof of the family bar, waiting up for the long-awaited Sunday sunrise after my last shift of the week. I lay on my carpet like a chalk outline, lined with evidence of joy. Gathering the photos in my hands, I return the fireflies to their plastic album sleeves, all but one. Joy is my grandmother's wide grin, a black jelly bean pressed to her front tooth, says a photo of us holding one another behind the bar counter. Today is her birthday, and we are not celebrating this year because she has been dead for months. The illusion dissipates in a plume of smoke. I find the world still ablaze outside my window. I leave the bedroom to join the almond milk, the Newports, and the busted lawn chair, eating the blackberries I used to pluck from her garden bushes and watching over deserted city streets, the image of an impending dystopia, the air stale and timeless. To touch a memory does not emulate joy. It emulates the desire for joy. I wonder how my desire for joy fits into the puzzled frame of a global crisis, how desire spoils rancid when people around you are dying in the past and the present and the future, when the clouds loom and the city is painted in ruins, overcast and forgotten in isolation, when the untrampled grass scratches at your bare ankles pleading for company, when a centipede steals into the dark polyester of the bedsheets seeking refuge from somewhere else. You've seen some shit, I offer, extending a broken hand. When the posters peel from the ceiling, a mounted record shatters against my dresser, the television grows fuzzy, the string of lights swing from the door frame during the night, which is too quiet even with the windows propped open. It's an extended metaphor, my partner says. We sit on the third step of a wooden-railed staircase, an appendage of the deserted bedroom of a former housemate. Smoke twists and drifts in tendrils rising from a spiraled glass bowl, a potent dose of bud that could be medical grade but isn't. Stars pocket the space of the sky, and I lean back against the ridges of wooden planks, breathing. The constellations seem to line themselves tonight, stars extending, joining hands in a galactic game of connect the dots. My knees bump against the knees beside, important knees, cherished knees, their knees. They've been talking for a while about the world and its intricate mechanics, about everything and nothing at once, emptying vessels of thoughts like glistening nectar beneath the moonlight. I watch the way their mouth moves as they speak, their upper lip tugging, energized behind a lowered guard. The canvas of stars lines the profile of their face, cross-illuminated by the lamp sitting warm at the basement windowsill, and the lights of tired trucks rumbling down empty 3 a.m. highways en route somewhere else. This is a nice memory, they say at last, clasping my knee, head tilted upward. I feel joy for the first time in weeks, and I hold on to it tight, arms wrapped around their shoulders in the silent hum of the evening, the soothing rush of the wind. Every so often, joy turns up in the crevices of small moments, looking only slightly different from before. I can feel it in the familiar laughter of my therapist over the phone, in wearing overalls and sandals on the porch, in the morning fire alarm sounding like clockwork when my partner fries bacon, in rolling over into them in the middle of the night and being lulled back to sleep by the rhythm of their rising chest, in the words "I love you" ringing along miles of telephone lines all the way from my best friend's mouth, in smoking with my housemates wrapped in blankets from the couch, in watching the reliable sunrise seep through the bedroom window, in listening to music with the forgotten blades of grass and the trash on the back lawn. The world may feel different, but the air is the same, and every evening the stars return to the sky again. Joy is tender, fragile, and fleeting, but joy is not gone. If you're quiet, you can still find joy at the bottom of a pot of coffee or between the folds of fresh linen, in the breeze of a mild afternoon, or waiting at the edge of the porch steps after rainfall, in the echo of a familiar voice and the brush of cherished knees against your own, nudging your mind alive, you of what remains in all the rubble. To desire joy amid suffering is to remain hopeful for all that is left. Thank you.
Wow. Please go ahead and unmute yourselves and make noise for our featured performers tonight. Do whatever you need to do to get your expression out. Shout, scream, clap. Bark, bark. This is the time that we are going to open up our mic to you, the audience. And we have a few folks who have already signed up.
Yeah, I'm just an amateur performer. I don't really do a lot of spoken word. I just write, so it's one of my first times, but here it goes. It's called 846. Dear George Floyd, I sit here in disbelief, sick to my stomach and struck in awe. Before Monday, May 25th, 2020, the world was hanging on by a thread. Not from a pandemic or an economic disaster, but a crippling humanity. On Monday, May 25th, 2020, during the last moments of your life, frantically gasping for air, pleading for mercy, under the suffocating force of a painstaking knee imprint to the neck from a white man in a blue uniform, the same white man in a blue uniform who once pledged to do his job honestly and sincerely, your world became the world's political. And the thread was cut. Your death sent the world plummeting. After Monday, May 25th, 2020, your lack of presence filled the world with emptiness and an eerie silence. Yet every voice spoke up, every cry was heard, and each name that demanded it be said was acknowledged. But we did not stop there. The story of a Black man traumatized, tortured, and even publicly murdered from the malicious hands of privilege, pride, and greed is not an uncommon one, especially in a land of red, white, and blue. But what about Black? Despite all odds, your death did not become another statistic. Rather, your death urged people to see the human in the story and understand not just the impact on a societal level, but also on a single beating heart. It reawakened the fire and passion in people's souls that were for so long tired, worn out, and left flickering with a single flame of hope. I wish it had not taken your death for institutions, for human beings to feel the pain and scrutiny, and the importance of questioning the why behind the pain and scrutiny faced by Black and other POC individuals on a daily basis. But for what it's worth, I pray that you know your death did not go in vain, and that those 8 minutes and 46 seconds you were subject to the utmost disrespect for human life were what it took for those hundreds of years of human suffering to be taken a second look at, scrutinized, and validated. Dear George Floyd, may you rest in peace. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So I also don't really read my stuff often, but these were the pieces that I submitted for the diversity showcase. Yeah, so one is a shorter one and the other is not quite prose. That you'll see. Yeah, okay. So this one is a lack of composition. The melting pot is now full of contently fractured individuals. Chastity not so sought after, but I won't be the one to fight it. Many never had that freedom, centuries of survival and thriving, only to be taken away by a pale god atop a dragon. No conozco mi idioma verdadero. And me, where does that place me? I've lost any maleko awika, more maika marama, no chibcha, more kovika, surrendering to the newcomer. An afterthought mixture of the mountainside and new language of a singular god. Donde está el pesado? I am neither the conquered nor the conquistador, but somehow both. Look what they've done. Left us incomplete, shunning forced ancestry. I'll spit on the words of anyone telling me I'm Spanish, but I hate more that they'd be right. Me falta alguna integridad, nos falta. That's the first one. This one is it's a little longer, not too bad. Titled, I Only Had a White Dress. There have always been times where I'm shocked into a certain state. Something I'm sure I should have already known, but couldn't say why I didn't. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, mi nieta se llama Camila. They took a candle nestled into a tall glass typically made for drinking, labeled with the mother of a better forgotten son, and lit it within me, exposing more holes than I thought I had. Abuela and I entered into an already hiccuping custom of altars and beads and breads, and I will always feel the need to apologize for the fact I didn't understand. Manolo was a wonderful man, a strong and thoughtful man. Lo extraño, pero estábamos listos. I only ever saw the aftermath and helped nameless cousins in the back make plates of pastries and fruit. I set up chair next to chair, next to chair, next to fold-up chair, while avoiding the pictures set up on the stacked altar. It felt blasphemous looking at the smile in the frame. I left suddenly, sneaking out to the neighboring house with a stranger named my cousin Mario. Or maybe it was the younger brother of my cousin Mario. He spoke English, and so he spoke uncultured and ignorant. We drank a little and smoked even less because we didn't know what else to do together. Itza was already preparing the bedroom when we arrived, awaiting a second, or would it be third, arrival that never came. I don't remember if she cried when she got the phone call. I only remember my frantic urge to bake a cake. Little known fact, there are no lemons in Costa Rica, at least not for the average person in Alajuela. Another little known fact, lemon and lime are indistinguishable in layered cakes when not taking into account zest. Her father died. I baked her a lemon cake. I felt like a failure without having failed. I had only been to a few funerals before, never one where I couldn't understand what people were saying twice over. Usually just because they're crying too heavily, not because they're crying and speaking a language I don't fully know. I only had a white dress and shoes I had recently bought from a market that were red straw and striped fabric. We walked from the church to the cemetery only a few blocks close enough to see the stacked stone. Soil too wet cannot be filled with coffins, only grief, so we make houses above the ground to keep our dead where they can see the sky. I didn't see where they put Itza's father. I stayed by the fountain in the center of the cemetery, kicking the dirt like a child. I hate even more that he gave me an experience I, in a way I never anticipated, will cherish forever, stuck in a place of shame and appreciation. I don't hate that he gave me that afternoon, but I cannot thank him at the house he now rests because I don't remember his name, if I ever knew it at all. Yeah, that's it.
All right, so this is a song I wrote a couple days ago. Also, I guess you could call this another journey of like the progression, but I wrote it while I was sitting. It's actually not even done, but I wrote it while I was sitting outside. It just kind of represents the calm of like the early morning, not thinking about racism or anything like that. But okay, here we go.
It's just me and my chair against the world. Not a single care, not worried about the world. Waking up before dawn, while the world is turning on. It's just me in my chair against the world. The flowers don't mind if I sing, and even if they do, the trees are listening. The stars are getting jealous, while the moon is overzealous. It's just me in my chair against the world. And my chair doesn't hate me 'cause I'm black. And even if it did, there's no way it could fight back. Waking up before dawn, while the world is turning on. It's just me in my chair against the world. Hey, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Yeah, my chair against the world. It's just me in my chair against the world. Against the world. All right, thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you, Eric. What a great way to end.